Welcome to Financial Planning in Public number 6. This is Russ, and I want to continue our conversation from last time where we looked at this screen and I attempted to explain the process of stress testing the plan, the importance of sequence of return, the potential dangers with average returns. We did that by looking at how a lower average return can actually wind up with more money than a higher average return. And again, that's due to the sequence or the order in which those returns are experienced. If I haven't confused you already, let me show you one more way that we can stress test our plans that I think might make a little bit more sense. So now instead of using somewhat random returns and future potential scenarios, now we're going to actually look backwards in history and look at how this portfolio, how Lillian's recommended plan would have held up throughout history. So now we're actually using historical returns, and these are monthly historical returns going back to January of 1926. So for example, if we had just for sake of simplicity, if we had a 30-year life expectancy and we started in January of 1926, we would look at monthly returns we'd look at returns from January 1926 through December of, let's see, that'd be 1955. So that'd be 30 years later. Then the next simulation or the next test we would run would be from February 1926 through January of 1956. And so we keep looking at those those 30-year periods starting from one month and ending at another month. And we use that to see how the plan would have held up over time. Here, we can use history as a guide. It's not predictive, as you've heard me or inevitably read my writing in the past. History is no guarantee of future results. That is absolutely true. And I don't just say that because my compliance department asked me to say it. It's the actual truth. So what we can see here, though, is how the recommended plan that we're looking at for Lillian actually held up over time. And what you can see initially is, remember when we ran the Monte Carlo, the simulations, we saw that she had about a 47% chance of excess. Here, we actually make it up to 66%. Before we start running into problems, which means that if we use this historical audit or this historical reference, she actually has a better outcome than if we use more randomized stress testing. So that's point number one. The other point I'll make is we can actually use, if we sort by market period, we can actually use history to give us a guide to how we might deal with or cope with situations that we might have seen in the past. So for example, right now, I'm recording this in September of 2022. We're dealing with rising inflation and rising interest rates, which has put downward pressure on both the stock market and bond markets, which has not been any fun in the portfolios that my clients and I manage together. So how can we use this tool to see how we might have done in the past? And what you can see here is that if we go back to, let's say, the 1960s, the mid 60s, the late 50s into the 60s, that's another period where we saw higher inflation and rising interest rates. So here I've basically sorted the outcomes I sorted them by market period. So you can basically see that we're looking at more or less how Lillian's plan would have held up in different time periods, and we've sorted them by time period. So here, if we look at how the plan would have done in, let's say, October of 64 to September of 99, we actually had a good average return, but it still wasn't enough. And Lillian basically ran out of money at age 92. But just a couple of years later, if we had looked at retiring in, say, April of 67, running through March of 2002, we had a return of almost 9%, and we wound up with $1 million. So again, this is another great example of how the sequence of returns can make a big impact on not just your portfolio returns, but your ability to support a sustainable income stream to make your lifestyle work throughout the rest of your life. Another thing that's interesting to point out here as well is let's highlight these two right here. I'm going to actually unclick this one. A big concern among the clients that I talk to is, what if I retire at the wrong time? And there's no way to see the future. But what I do want to highlight here is that in this black line here, it obviously runs out of money. But if you had retired just 5 months later, so if you'd retired in August of 37, the plan didn't work and you ran out of money. If you had retired just 5 months later in January of 1938, you would have not only avoided running out of money, you would have actually had about over $1.1 million at the end of the day. So there's no way to plan for or to see ahead and know when is the perfect time to retire. But this tool can give us some context and help us hopefully help build some comfort and peace of mind around the fact that despite the timing of retirement or the timing of these potential events or market scenarios in the future, through regular review, updating and accommodating new information, through stress testing your plan, through making hopefully small minor adjustments along the way versus letting 2 or 3 or more years go by and have to potentially make a big, expensive and potentially painful adjustment to your plan. I think this is a planning process that is designed to be fluid and somewhat nimble and allow you to keep your plan in the comfort zone. And you'll hear me refer to the comfort zone a lot. That's the range between 75 and 90%. That's where we want your plan to be. We're not building a plan and managing and measuring it to like a razor's edge of precision. We think and operate in terms of ranges, because not only can we not see the future, we don't know what your taxes are going to be or what your cable bill is going to be in 3 years, let alone in 30 years. I think a lot of planning approaches would indicate a false sense of precision because we just don't know. So that's why we use ranges. That's why we talk in terms of the comfort zone, and we want to build your plan into the comfort zone so we have enough comfort and confidence that you can live a great life today and every day along your life's journey while still being well prepared for a very uncertain future. And this planning process, this ongoing planning process, is what gives us the ability to not predict the future and not to be too reactionary, but to use current information in the context of your goals, your lifestyle, what it is you want to do for yourself, for your family, and for those other people in organizations that are important to you, to build a plan that really makes you or helps you make the most of your one shot at life. So anyway, that is what we call historical audit. It provides a nice counterbalance to the Monte Carlo simulation, which is the kind of the more randomized stress testing process that we utilize. Coincidentally, Monte Carlo is what we actually use to judge whether or not your plan is in the comfort zone. And so that's what we'll be looking at going forward. But we do have the benefit of historical audit and see how the plan would have held up in history through different periods of history. And again, we can also use that as a tool to help us maybe better interpret what we might be dealing with today if we've gone through a similar period in the past. So hope this was helpful. Thanks for joining us, and I look forward to catching up with you in our next video.